Hey everybody, Coloring Book Dog here, and do I have a story for you? This time it's about a teacher I had who I found out later was a furry. In high school, I didn't really know what furry was. I was part of the Lion King fandom, obviously. That was kind of my gateway into furry. I was always drawing in class. I got in trouble for that a lot. I was constantly drawing, wasn't taking notes, was just drawing, and it drove everybody nuts because I would put minimal effort into homework and notes and stuff like that, and then I would go and I'd get an A on the test and set the curve for the class, and people got super angry about that. Well, I had this substitute teacher who really was one of the few teachers who was actually cool about that. She was very encouraging. She always didn't really care about me drawing in class. She knew I did well, and she just was always super encouraging. She was actually a substitute teacher, but I had her for 3 different science classes because I don't know how this happened, but all 3 of these science classes, the assigned teacher had to take extended leave. So it was pretty cool because she always came in and she would be our substitute, and I had her for 3 different classes, and it was always awesome. Always enjoyed her classes, always learned a lot more from her classes, and yeah, it was always super fun. Kind of the first sign that now looking back on high school, I do remember us talking about the periodic table of elements and telling us how her favorite element is tungsten because the original name for it is wolfram, which is, as she said, her husband's name. So I was okay, that's kind of a cool name. I like animals, and it'd be pretty cool to have a name like Wolfram or Wolf or whatever. And, now looking back on that now, it's going to start making a lot more sense as the story progresses. But yeah, she was always super hilarious in class. When I had her for earth science, she talked about how this was the only class that we talked about dropping acid and cleavage. In referring to in caves, you have the dropping acid in there and how rocks are formed. And then also cleavage, which is the separation of rocks and whatever. And that was her first day teaching us for the rest of the semester, and I was just rolling. I thought that was the funniest thing ever, and I'll never forget it. She was super engaging, she was super encouraging, she was super informative, and I just really got along with her. She noticed that I was drawing all the time, and she asked me, hey, obviously you don't want to get into math or chemistry because I hated it. What do you want to do? And at the time I had considered maybe getting into animation. I was making little tiny animations here and there, and I just absolutely enjoyed it. Eventually I grew to realize that I didn't want to spend that much time animating things, and there was just a general push towards CGI and things like that, and it really wasn't up my alley. I didn't really feel like doing that. So I told her, I said, yeah, I think it'd be cool to be an animator or a storyboard artist or something like that. And she told me, hey, that's super respectable. It's a hard field to get into, but, I think you can do it. And I thought that was super cool because a lot of times in school, I was getting my drawings taken away from me or ripped up in front of me. And it just was really frustrating because it was the teachers wanted you to do things a very specific way, even though time and time again, I proved that I didn't have to do things a specific way, and I was still getting high test scores. So it was always really cool to have her as a teacher because she was super encouraging. She wasn't pushy about that kind of stuff, and I just always got along with her. So I graduate from high school, and then later that year I end up going to MFF. I'm only there for Sunday, so I don't end up seeing a lot. It's actually kind of funny because a lot of the people that I met that day, I still know to this day, which is super cool. So after that, I end up getting more involved in the local furry community, and I start making a ton of friends. It's a perfect fit for me. I absolutely love it. I was not really sure if furry was for me because back then there was a pretty big distinction between the Lion King fandom and the furry fandom, and there wasn't really a lot of crossover, believe it or not. I mean, now it's with Zootopia, it's there's an obvious crossover there. A lot of furries were made furries because of that movie. With the Lion King fandom, there was definitely a separation at the time. I'm sure it's different now. I don't really hang out in those circles anymore. but I'm sure it's different now. But, I wasn't sure if furry was right for me, but the first time I go to MFF, I absolutely loved it. I loved all the art. I loved all the costumes. I had actually made a terrible fursuit because I thought you needed a fursuit to go, which is obviously not true. Obviously, I've gotten a lot better with making fursuits since then. I end up making a ton of friends, and the next year at MFF, a bunch of my friends want me to participate in the furry variety show. And so I'm like super excited about this because, I was a theater kid. Like I love performing, I love improv, I love plays, anything like that. So when they were like, hey, we really want you to, do these acts in the furry variety show, I was like, I'm in. At this point, I have a new fursuit. It's the head I commissioned from Lacey, and I ended up doing the rest of it. And I don't remember how many acts I was in that furry variety show. I do remember being in the Dungeon Master skit, where's the Cheetos? Mountain Dew and Cheetos, and I attacked the darkness, that whole thing. Like, I remember being in that. And then there was a couple other ones that I was a part of as well. But needless to say, after that, a whole night of fursuiting, I was exhausted. At this point, MFF is in Schaumburg. Schaumburg is really, really close to where I lived. So I ended up just driving to and from the con every day, which I actually do that now. I'm a much farther away from the con now, but I do end up just driving every day. I'm driving home, back and forth every day, and Furry Variety Show ends up going super late. I don't even remember. It was after midnight. And I was just exhausted because this was probably the longest I'd ever suited. This was one of the first times I was ever performing in suit. There was a lot of anxiety and stress related to that. But they ended up, so I end up taking my big old fursuit bin, because I had a really big one, and I wheel it out into the hallway of the hotel. So I just want to relax for a little bit before I drive home. So I pull my fursuit bin out into the hallway. And I'm just kind of laying on top of it, dramatically, because I was tired and I just wanted to relax a little bit before I hopped in the car and went home. And there was also a couple people I wanted to meet up with and say goodbye to before I left. And there was a person that was sitting, so I'm sitting there draped over my fursuit bin. She says, oh, are you doing okay? And I said, yeah. I said, I'm just really tired. I just got done with the Furry Variety Show. I'm absolutely exhausted. And she goes, hey, you were in some of my classes. And so I'm not even looking at her at this point. I'm just draped over the fursuit bin. And I look up and I'm just I look at her. And I'm just staring at her for a little bit. And I go, Mrs. P? And now that's not her actual initial, but I'm just gonna, say, I'm not gonna say her full name. I don't want to out her. But I just look at her, and I'm just looking at her, and I'm like, this is P? And she's just like, Sema! And because that was my nickname in high school, too. And I was just like, oh my god! I'm like, are you serious? You're a furry? And she's just like, yeah, I guess so. And I said, that explains a lot. And she looks at me, and she goes, that explains a lot about you, too. And we were just laughing, and I was like, oh my god, I can't believe that I just ran into my teacher at a furry con. And it really made sense. It really made, it made me look back and reflect on all the things that I had known about her in high school and how she had treated me and how she was awesome and whatever. And the fact that I got along with her so well, it was like, oh my god, I can't believe that this happened. This is so cool. The sad part is that I never saw her at a con after that. I don't know if she kind of bailed or whatever. Maybe she just wasn't that heavily involved in the furry fandom. But I mean, she admitted to being a furry to me, right there. And it was just crazy. I mean, I've literally never had anything like that happen since then. I know that there's a couple of people who went to my high school, who knew me in high school, who are furries now, but nothing will ever top the story of seeing one of my teachers sitting outside of a panel room at MFF. It was absolutely crazy. And, like she said and like I said, that explains a lot. So I really hope you enjoyed this story. I'm really enjoying this series and getting to tell you guys all these silly stories. I've got a ton of them, so I have a ton of content for a while. I hope you're having a great day. And if not, I hope this made it a little bit better. I'm Coloring Book Dog, and these are the CBD Chronicles. Thanks for sticking around to the end of the video. If you could like this video, that would be awesome. It would help me out a lot. And what would really help me is if you subscribe, because I'm really close to 1,000 subscribers. And if you want to hear more stories, here's one about my friend who took shrooms in high school. It's the most hilarious story. I absolutely love telling this story. And then right here is a video that YouTube recommends for you. So thanks for stopping by, and I'll see you in the next video.